And there it is. So anyway, we're now recording. So sorry for anybody watching this now who missed the first hour. You didn't miss much. I took a lot of roll, and I gave us a brief walk through the course site itself. Not terrible that we missed any of that, but the meat of the session, the main event that I'm sure you've all been waiting for, is the syllabus itself. So let me go ahead and share my screen now, and we'll jump into that. So the syllabus, again, can be reached by going to this tab that says syllabus, and that will bring you here, which is my Lighthouse site for us. First thing I'll go over is office hours. I'm going to schedule office hours for Tuesdays from 5 to 5:30. If that doesn't work for you, just send me an email. We can set up a time to meet. I'm pretty flexible with it. Anytime between Tuesday and Thursday is generally a good time to get me. I'm not really available on the weekends. I am a factotum of jobs, so my weekends are pretty busy right now. But Tuesday through Thursday, I'm open, especially Wednesdays. I'm pretty wide open. I'll usually only be doing tutoring on Wednesdays, but just reach out to me and we can accord on something that works with you and your schedule. If 5 to 5:30 doesn't, I typically don't have a lot of people deluging me for office hours, but if you need them, they are there. Again, this is English 1301, and we're section 010. So again, if you are not in that section, this would be a great time to leave. Course requirements, one of these criteria must apply to you to be enrolled in this class. I looked through the course prerequisites before we started today. It seemed like everybody was in compliance. If you are worried that you are not eligible to be in this class, please reach out. It has happened before. It's not supposed to, but generally speaking, if you're in this class, it's a foundational class. Everybody's got to take it. But if you see that you do not adhere to one of these criteria, definitely let me know and we can get that taken care of better earlier than later. Student learning outcomes: to successfully complete this class, students should cultivate skills including organization, critical reading, writing a thesis, writing coherent paragraphs and transitions, revision, and a basic understanding of MLA documentation. Just a show of hands or emojis. Does anybody have, what is your familiar with MLA style? Do we know what MLA style is? I'm seeing some heads shaking, yes and no, some sort of like maybe. I'm not sure. Great. Good to know. Good to know. I'm pretty used to people coming in on the ground floor. I tend to operate as if nobody has any familiarity with MLA style. We'll get into a little bit more of what it is, but generally speaking, like I could show you the manual. This is our beautiful 9th edition MLA handbook that you don't have to buy unless you want a 200-word, 200-page book about formatting. But what MLA style is, it's basically gives us some guidelines on how to cite sources when we're borrowing language, when we're quoting things directly. Also, it gives us some guidance on like setting up what's called a works cited page. If you've worked with something called APA style, they call it a references page. APA and MLA, they share some ideas, they execute them a little bit differently. There's a lot of different academic styles. Another one is Chicago. I doubt anyone at ACC will be messing with Chicago too much. It's more of like a university or graduate level style. But then there are also some field specific ones. Generally speaking, though, the more you're more often than not going to be involved with MLA in the English department, and most other departments use APA. So everybody takes it in English class. You learn MLA, and then you'll probably never use it after that. But you'll use APA, and you'll be able to take. Yeah, especially nursing, I think uses APA for sure. And I think psychology definitely does, because it's the American Psychological Association. Some disciplines are a little bit flexible. Some people don't really care as long as you just use one of the styles. They don't care if you use MLA or APA. But even though the styles execute things a little bit differently, they're pretty conversant in their ideas. all that other stuff, we'll sort of cross those bridges when we get to them, because we are going to cover a bunch of different subjects. I broached a little of this earlier, but we're going to be talking about basic grammar, including the basic parts of speech. What's a run-on sentence? What's a sentence fragment? What is a sentence, right? It's kind of shocking to think that, I mean, maybe not shocking, but, you know, if I were to ask you right now, you know, what does every sentence have to have? Like, what are like the two essential elements of a sentence? Punctuation. Okay. Yeah. That wasn't one I was thinking, but all right. Three essential elements of a sentence. Absolutely, Deborah. Subject and a verb. A noun phrase is going to be you know, a subject is a noun phrase, right? So yeah, you're right on top of that. That's great. Yeah. So we'll talk about subjects and verbs, creating fully formed sentences, what constitutes a sentence fragment, what's a run-on sentence, how to address those things, how to revise a sentence. We'll learn a little bit about active and passive voice. Capitalization, another important point of a sentence. Maybe not the most important point, but definitely important to understand what to capitalize and when to capitalize it. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the voices, passive and active voice. In particular, passive voice is a thing that if you're not aware of using it, you probably use it more than you think. We'll talk about some general writing stuff, steps in the writing process, generating ideas, brainstorming, drafting, revision, proofreading. We'll talk about some general ideas like showing versus telling, paragraph and essay structure, creating topic sentences and transitions, revision. The major purposes of writing, the four major purposes that we're going to talk about are expressive writing and literary writing, referential writing, and persuasive writing. Referential writing being writing whose purpose is to simply inform. Persuasive writing is argument and writing that is aimed at changing your mind or moving your beliefs from one state to another. We'll talk about rhetoric, which is a big fancy word for using language persuasively. We'll talk about something called the rhetorical situation, which I aim to introduce us to today. And like I said, we'll talk about the rhetorical analysis and the different appeals, including the appeal to credibility, reasoning, and emotion. We'll talk about logic. A very, very brief introduction to logic. This is a logic class, but part of persuasive writing is using reasoning and logic. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the big ideas in logic that we need to know about. One of those being fallacies. Fallacies are not arguments, but they often seem like arguments. They're bad reasoning that are fooling you into thinking that they're not bad reasoning. In particular, we'll talk about informal fallacies. That's really the bread and butter of this class. Formal fallacies, if you want to know about formal fallacies, take a logic class. It's a lot of fun. If you're really into computer science, you might really like logic. We'll talk a lot about research. We'll talk about how to summarize, the difference between summarizing, paraphrasing, and directly citing. We'll talk about Mla Style. We'll talk about abstract things like academic tone and what an academic tone means, and how like different elements of language that communicate tone and recognizing it. And we'll talk about how to use quotes effectively. This is a zero textbook course. I've kind of refined these ideas over the last couple of years. I don't require a physical textbook for this class. I like not having a textbook for the class. All of my readings are links that are in the content. So if we go back to the course content, for example, let's say we're, coming up for next time, you're going to read one thing and watch one thing. You'll be watching Aditye's TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story, which is a video which is embedded, but it's a TED Talk she gave. And you'll also be reading Cheryl Strayed's Write Like a Motherfucker, which gives me the opportunity to put motherfucker in my syllabus. But this is Cheryl Strayed was she still is, she's alive. But she maintained an advice column at the Rumpus for a long time. This is a kind of an expressive writing piece that she did, responding to somebody's question about like, not not feeling like they're a writer, wanting to know like how you become a writer, how do you define yourself as a writer. And so all of my links will be like this, David Sedaris, this one's published by NPR, but this is kind of an excerpt from one of his books. So this is like what all my readings are going to look like, where it's been possible. And it's like 90% of all of my readings have good links that you'll be able to follow. When they don't have a good link, it'll look a little bit more like this, which is an HTML document that I have formatted to work pretty well, even on small screens. So as long as you're accessing Blackboard, you should have a pretty decent way to read this. Since it's an HTML document, it's going to like format a lot nicer than like a, like a Word document or something like that. If you ever have any problems accessing any of these readings, let me know. The earlier, the better. One way or another, I will get the reading to you. But generally speaking, you should have access to all of these. And in terms of the notes, I make all my notes out of PowerPoints and I save them as PDF files. So again, you shouldn't have any problem. Like they have a lot of like cross-platforming functionality. You should be able to access these pretty easily. Again, if you can't, let me know. They should be pretty conversant with screen readers. If you are using SAS technologies, if you do use screen readers and you encounter any difficulty with them, let me know so that I can go back in and work on that. I try to make my stuff as translatable as possible across different mediums. And even if you don't have any SAS documents, I know that some people just prefer to have things read to them by like an AI. That's fine. I totally support that. So if you'd rather have the PDF, I can also, I can provide the PDFs too. I can find some way to post those on there, but these are just going to, or if you'd rather have the PowerPoint instead of the PDF, but I usually don't have any problem with people accessing the PDFs. That said, what do I pull my notes from? Most of my notes come from this book called Purpose Pattern Process, which is a very large anthology by Linus Polnack and Arun John. I think it's still in its 9th edition. But I pull in a lot of notes from, I really like They Say, I Say, Hurley's Logic, like classic logic textbook, and then some stuff I've been flirting with this other introduction to logic, especially with fallacies. It's a little bit more updated. Hurley's is a little bit dated now, especially as examples. And then once we get a little bit more into research, I pull some stuff from the MLA Guide to Undergraduate Research and Literature and the MLA Guide to Digital Literacy, especially when we get to talking about evaluating websites and doing crap analysis. These are the major readings that we're going to be doing. And it looks like a lot of these are paired. They're generally pretty short. I kind of made it a point to with one exception, no single reading is, I think, over like 1,300 words, which is about typed out like 3 pages or something like that, 3 to 5 pages. It kind of depends, like double line spaced, like 3 to 5 pages. But they're generally pretty short. You can generally read them, in a pretty short period of time. You should be able to understand all of these. I haven't run into anything. They're pretty accessible arguments. Most of the arguments, they're going to start with Kevin Solling's Why I Think Students Should Cheat. Always a fun time. And these will be the ones that are highlighted here. These will be the ones that we'll talk about for our rhetorical analysis. Before that, we've got Adichie. We've got Cheryl Strayed, David Sedaris, Chris Rewarias. This is tossing. I really like this one. These are expressive and literary writings up here. These are going to be our referential and persuasive writing. We'll be looking at Brooks and Beckham. They're also making arguments, but we'll be looking at them with a little bit different focus. We're not exactly doing rhetorical analysis as much as we're going to be looking at what is an argument made out of, like more of the mechanics and the structure of an argument, rather than asking, does the argument work? Is it persuasive? How are they appealing to us? A little bit different of a distinction. My one exception to the link is Christopher Beckham's Beyond College and Career Readiness, Education's Broader Purposes. This is from an academic journal. It's the longest reading on the syllabus. It's 12 pages, but you also have the most time to read this one. I think this one is, there will be 1 week where we don't have readings for a class that I'll just be talking about research concepts. And that week is the week that you'll be reading Brooks and Beckham. Brooks's article is incredibly short. It's probably the shortest, and I've paired him with the longest. So the little best of both worlds on that one. So and they're going to be talking about basically kind of making different arguments about the uses of college. I found that those are really interesting to pair together. And you'll notice very immediately they take two very different approaches to language. Attendance practices. Like I said, regular class attendance is not mandatory, but it is expected, and excessive absences are grounds for removal, depending on how you're doing. Again, like I said, I'm not going to yank you out of the class without opening up a dialogue first. And again, if you have anything terrible happening outside of class that's debilitating your ability to take the class, please let me know. Our sessions will be conducted on Zoom as they are right now, and they begin at 6. We've had our short break, and that's pretty much how I'll have all the classes running. Like I said, all the recorded sessions are going to be posted on my YouTube channel and a playlist for this section. It's going to be named Summer 2022 1301-010. And then I introduced you earlier to the playlist called Formatting Documents. It's got 2 short videos. One's about MLA, one's about basic document formatting. This is an important point. Within the first week, I have to complete something called the attendance certification. And to do that, I need to make sure that you have been here and you have been a warm body in a seat learning things from me. And in order to say that, yes, this is a person that has been there, I've created an assignment called the Orientation Assignment and Syllabus Quiz, which I will go over right now. So to find the orientation assignment, you go to course content, and it's now the first thing you will see there. It has pushed all of the modules down. So if you want to find the modules, they're under this assignment. So this is what it's going to look like when you click on the course content. It's got 3 parts to it. Part 1 is a general introduction, 4 short answers. These are generally like getting to know you. What are your reading habits? What are your writing habits? Also some interesting questions that are just useful for me to know, like what kind of word processing app do you usually use? Are you on Google Docs? Are you on Microsoft Word? It helps me get a feel of like how to talk about different ideas, because the systems are a little bit different. If you're using Apple Pages, don't, because Blackboard doesn't play nice with Apple. If you are using Apple Pages, you're either going to have to convert your documents to a PDF, or you'll have to use something like OpenOffice. We have free access to Microsoft Office as ECC students and staff. If you would like to know more about that, I can give you some more information about where to download your free copy of Microsoft Office. But just know that if you try to upload an Apple Pages, it just won't happen. It'll just show up as a processing error on my side. And your experience with distance learning. Tell me a little bit about what it's like. Write about 100 words in total to answer these questions. You can go over, but tell me a little bit. Part 2 is the academic honesty quiz, which is the plagiarism tutorial. You'll follow this link and take the library's blisteringly interesting PowerPoint presentation about what plagiarism is and academic honesty. And you'll take a short quiz. At the end of that, pass that quiz with at least a 70. Please don't turn in failed academic honesty results. It's happened before. But you'll navigate to this link and it'll take you to this site, at the end of which, like I said, there will be a short quiz to take about academic honesty. And there will be some instructions on how to print or email your results. It'll show you how to either download your results as a PDF, take a screenshot of the results and upload them, whatever may have you. Upload this as a its own document. You'll be able to upload more than one document to this submission. And then part 3 is the syllabus quiz. It's 10 questions about the syllabus to make sure that you're familiar with the concepts that we talked about today. And I will make sure, I've already mentioned some pieces of information, such as regular class attendance, and number 10, if you do not complete this assignment, then I will certify you as having not attended. True or false, right? We'll cover a couple more of those. I've talked about the discussion threads a little bit. I'll come back to that. Some of these you might already know the answer to. Some of them you might not. For instance, the withdrawal rule in Texas. If you've been in college before, you might be familiar with that. So what you can do to upload this, you'll go to this link up at the top. And it'll bring you to the assignment submission page. And if you scroll down, you'll have some options to submit your assignment. You can browse your local folder. And let's say, you've saved your document and you want to upload it. Where is my example file? Here we go. You can put your file, you can upload a file like that. You can type your response, or not, actually, no, don't type your response in the text. Yeah, this is the comment section. Don't type into this thing that says add comments. It's kind of hard for me to explain what happens when you put content into this box, but it puts it all in this little tiny band on the side of the submission page. And it's real weird. I don't know why they give you an option to leave comments. It's super weird. Just upload your submission. There's another option. If you, it says text submission, you can click this box and it will give you a submission box. And if you want to write your content in here, go crazy there. But this is if you want to use the internal like word processing application. This thing's not ideal. It's kind of a pain in the ass, to be totally honest. If you know HTML, you can put your, I don't know why you would be writing your responses in HTML, but you can do that. The easiest thing to do is just type it as like a Word document or an open Office document and upload your file like that. And then you hit submit and it'll generate an email saying that your assignment has been submitted, and it will show you an option. It'll show you a page like this. I've already gotten the email that has told me my assignment has been accepted. And so this is what it'll look like, right? And so I can go through here and I can easily read all of this. This little box over here on the right, like if you type it into the add comments, this is where your content will pop up, like over here in this weird little crowded area. It's super weird. I don't know why they do that. But that's how you can upload multiple documents, right? If you were to go back, not to the syllabus, if you were to go back to the content, and let's say you wanted to go in here, you can just keep uploading. You can click start new, right? You've already uploaded one. I can attach as many files as I want to. I can put this file here. I can put, so you can upload your plagiarism results, and you can upload a separate document that's like all the different responses to parts 1 and 2. And you can just click submit, and it'll submit all of these, and it'll show me here on the side like, oh, okay, there's more than one document that I need to look at here. So and then I can enter in the score over here, and that's where it'll pop up, right? Oh yes, look at all these documents, how fantastic. Okay, I won't belabor that too much, it's kind of boring. Okay, so that's the syllabus quiz. So you'll complete this by Friday, 11:59 on Friday. Most of my assignments, the discussion threads are going to be due by noon, the day of our sessions. Basically, everything else is going to be due by 11:59. To find out when something is due, you can go to my grades, it'll show you. You can go to my calendar, it'll show you. You can look at the top of each individual assignment rubric, and I've got the due date listed on all of them there too. So it's listed in triplicate at the very least. Any questions about any of that? That all seem pretty intuitive.
Yeah, I have a question for the part 3. When we're typing it out on like a Word document, do you want us to just put 1 and then our choice of answer, the letter?
Yeah, you can just put the letter answer. Yeah.
Okay, so you don't need us to like type it all up and say my answer selection is the number we chose.
Right. Yeah, you can just put the letter. You can type out the whole answer if you want to, but as long as I can see like, okay, the answer number 1 is this multiple choice selection, that's all I really need there. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
For the discussion boards that are always due 12, like how would those work out? Like, are we given subjects to write about?
Yes. So there's a prompt to write about those. And I will get to that presently. So we'll put a pin in that and we'll get there in like a quick hop, skip, and a jump. All right. I put this in bold because I was feeling very like authoritative when I wrote it. I understand that not everybody can have their camera on all the time. It does get a little bit weird looking just into the void and hearing and seeing nothing except myself. So, if you can put your camera on, do it, please. And, generally keep it, and y'all been really good about this, keep everything muted. That way it just like reduces the background noise. But there will be like times for discussion too that will, especially when we do rhetorical analysis, we're going to read some arguments. We don't get too contentious politically, but there's going to be some times where people are going to have some opinions. Be respectful, talk one at a time, don't try to interrupt people, let people make their statement, and then, we'll sort of, and I'll do my best to sort of referee as well as you can around all that. Again, we're not reading like, it's not an ethics class, it's not a philosophy class, but we are, you know, we are going to talk about some ideas that invariably some people in this class are ideologically opposed on. It's just going to happen, right? But generally keep your microphones muted, especially when we're doing like lecture stuff. But I try to make it more interactive than that, so I don't lull you to sleep with the sonorous tones of my voice. Withdrawal policy. It's important for you to understand the withdrawal policy. I'm not going to belabor this too much, other than if you are a college student in Texas, you cannot withdraw for more than 6 classes in your entire undergraduate career. That's not the same everywhere. It's not a great rule. I don't agree with it, but it also happened after I went to college, so sorry. So just be mindful. Sometimes there's times to withdraw. Like sometimes you just have to do it. There's no way around it. I would prefer that we not get to that point, but you know, sometimes it happens. There are withdrawal instructions, and I think I have those a little bit later. I've got the policy. I thought I had the actual instructions on withdrawing, but I think I have the instructions for the incomplete. If you follow this link, that should take you to the course withdrawal instructions on the actual ACC site. Important dates. First day of class, May 31st. Congratulations, you've hit the first important date. Our withdrawal deadline this semester is July 25th. That is important. If you want to withdraw from the course, you should know before July 25th. Don't wait until 5 o'clock on July 25th to try to withdraw from the course. I can't guarantee that it will work. Our session ends on the 8th, which means my grades are probably due that following Wednesday, which is like the 11th, I think. Our last session is going to be on August the 4th. Use of email and etiquette. I won't go over this too much, except to say that when you're communicating with me, a couple of things, you know, it's a professional email, right? I do tend to be a little bit more informal in person and in session, but you know, if you're sending me an email, don't just text. It's not like you're texting me. I have some students that like to text you like, hey, I got a question. Like, treat it like an email, right? Treat it like a professional email, right? So, you know, don't type in all caps. You know, you've been on the internet, you're digital natives. Don't scream at people. You know, don't write to me in like weird, unique fonts that you created in your spare time. You know, just keep it pretty vanilla. The one thing that I will ask you is in your the subject field of the email, please include our course number. English 1301-10. Otherwise, it could be coming from anywhere. I get so many emails from the college. Oh, like when I look at my emails, if I can see this in the subject of your email, then I know, okay, that's a student email and I need to get to that as quickly as possible. And it's not just, I don't know, somebody telling me that the river bat is going to be at Highland campus this Saturday or something. And, you know, in your subject field, give me a brief description of, you know, what you're talking about, right? Assignment deadlines, right? Just, you know, give me a little summary of what your email is going to be about in the subject field. Now, the important stuff, assignments. You'll write at least 4,000 words, which sounds like a lot more than it actually is. There's at least 16 assignments, not including all the different parts of the research project. And like I said, there's a total of 1,000 points. Not all the assignments are weighted equally. All of the assignments for the research project equal about 40% of your grade. So if you decide that you're just not going to do research assignments, don't expect to pass. The discussion threads are worth about 32%. It's actually a fraction. It's like 31.6 or something like that. The rhetorical analysis assignments, of which there will be 3, those are worth about 23%. For the research project, you've got, these are the components of the research project. You're going to do a free writing where you're just going to do some brainstorming in text about some topics, some things that appeal to you. Really, really loose, really, really informal writing. I'll talk a little bit more in a minute about what a free writing is whenever I talk about the discussion threads. You'll do something called a CRAP analysis, which is an evaluation of an electronic source. There's a worksheet attached to that assignment. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get closer to it. You'll do a CRAP analysis of 2 different websites. It's just basically filling out a worksheet, answering some different questions about it, getting you in the habit of looking around a website, evaluating different parts of it, asking yourself questions about what is the credibility of this site? What is the credibility of this information? How can I assess it? Where do I know where to look for stuff? Your proposal is the first formal writing assignment you're going to do for me. It's going to be a proposal for what your research project is going to be about. And again, when we get a little bit closer to that assignment date, I'll go over that rubric for you and what I'm looking for there. You'll do a short annotated bibliography of a couple of sources. And annotated bibliography is just introduces some Mla style ideas, and it's basically a summary of that source and how you think you intend to use it in your paper. Then you'll give me a draft, which will be a 1,000 word draft. Which again is like 3 to 5 pages. And I think I've settled on at least 4 sources in your research paper drafts. And then you'll have a short presentation at the end of the semester. I'll talk more about the presentation elsewhere. Short 3 to 5 minute presentation. I might ask you a follow-up question or two, where you get to talk about your experience with the research paper itself. The discussion threads. With a few exceptions, there will be free writing exercises due twice a week at noon, the day of all of our sessions, and there'll be at least 200 words of content. Again, like I said, there'll be 150 words of original content and 50 words of content that you are responding to other people. You can write more than that for sure, but the minimum is 150 words on your original post, and then you have to generate 50 words at least in a comment to somebody else. And so, to your question, Abby, what does the discussion threads look like? If you go to the discussion threads part, you'll see that all the discussion threads are already laid out. So if you want to preview some ones that are coming up, you know, feel free to do that. But they will lock and disappear as the due dates wane. So this first one is due June 7th at noon, which is going to be next Tuesday. So what you'll do is you'll click on there, and it's got a prompt and some different elements of it. What you'll do, it's going to bring you to this page, which looks really confusing. You'll just go up here where it says create thread, and you'll click that, and then it'll bring you to the submission page there, and you can write your submission in that terrible little text box. Or I mean, you could upload it as a file. I don't know why you would want to do that, but you can. If you're more comfortable writing in a word processing application than you are in this. I mean, this is a fine little thing. I have a bias against it because it's done terrible things to me in the past, like delete all of my work without saving it. You can save your draft down here, save your drafts regularly. Technology crashes, and that's happened to me a couple of times. It's not ideal. So you got a prompt for all the discussion threads, right? And it'll tell you, describe some ideas that you're going to be playing around with in the prompt and how to respond to it. And then down here, all of my assignments have this essential elements. And this is like what exactly I'm looking for out of this response, right? So for example, this first one, it's a free writing exercise. So think about a value that's important to you. Refer to the expressive writing notes for the idea of an expression of values. Compose a free writing wherein you state and describe this value in a word or a short phrase and its importance to you. Consider questions such as, what is the definition of this? What emotional meaning does this value have to you? Or why is it important to you? How does this value relate to your sense of identity? After you compose your free writing, respond to at least one of the posts, noting similarities or differences in the way you each address the prompt, right? So this is a very general idea, right? And free writing, I'll get to this a little bit more. Free writing is it's like more about idea generation than it is about structure, right? I'm basically just looking for you to write in generally complete grammatically correct sentences. Otherwise, it's kind of like just get words on a page, right? Start generating ideas, start getting in the habit of writing, right? And this is to like regularly get you in the habit of like every day that we have a session, we're doing a little bit of writing, just to at least like get you in the habit of like getting ideas out, getting them on the page, using language, encountering the problems of becoming a habitual writer, right? And that's really, you know, other than writing in generally grammatically complete sentences, or yeah, I'm not really grading these for grammar, right? It's the freedom that is the benefit of these kinds of assignments. I'm looking for you to respond to this prompt and be on topic. I'm looking for at least 150 words of emotional content or of original content that responds to the prompt, and a response of 50 words, right? So these are very, very basic, like what I'm looking for here, right? As long as you're generating the content and you're responding to the prompt, that's all these free writings are, right? So these are like softball writings for you. Just get into the habit of writing, very low stakes, to build up your confidence mainly, right? So that when we approach the more structured writing assignments, that are eligible for revision, which these aren't eligible for revision, right? These are just going to be, free writing assignments, pound it out, get it done. Then there will be other assignments that will be eligible for revision that you can earn more points back through the process of revision. When you respond to others, this is a small comment or a full paragraph. Either or, as long as it is at least 50 words. It could be, if you can pack 25 words into a sentence, it's 2 sentences, right? If it's, I would say generally like, 3 to 5 medium length sentences will get the job done. But, if the main idea behind the free writing is like, just kind of don't stop, like get to 50 words. And it even matters less like if the thought is like totally coherent. If you're just like, I have a thing that I can't quite articulate what I'm trying to say. That's the process that I'm looking for in the free writing. It's just like the act of trying to articulate coherent ideas. And as long as we're doing that, then that's what we're looking for out of the free writing exercises. Does that make sense? Great. All right. What are we doing here? Oh, spending so much time. I wanted to get to some of these PowerPoints, but I might only get to one. Rhetorical analysis. So that's a discussion threads. There'll be 3 rhetorical analysis assignments. These aren't available yet. They will be later in the semester. I'll talk about these when we get to them. They'll be pretty short. They're about 400 words a piece, and you're going to take each one is going to be focused on a different reading that you'll do independently. It's not something we're going to talk about in class. You'll be provided with a reading that's attached to the prompt. You'll read it and you'll respond to it. Write me a paragraph that summarizes what is this about. Write me a second paragraph that tells me, that analyzes whatever specific appeal we're looking at. Tell me how this author is using the appeal to reason. Talk about how this author is using the emotional appeal. Talk about how this author is using the appeal to credibility. We'll talk about what the components of these things are. I don't necessarily expect you to understand what those things are right now. If you have some idea, great. But if not, we'll be drilling down on that. Basically, that's like the idea that undergirds all of the ideas in this session is, or not in this session, in this course, other than, developing a sense of structure, developing an idea about revising content and writing assignments. It's evaluating information. How are people manipulating me with language to believe the things that I think are true? How are they appealing to me? How are they playing on my biases and manipulating language itself to make me agree or disagree with them? And we'll look at that. And I say manipulation. Manipulation is just it's the negative word we use for persuasion. When we like it, it's persuasion. When we don't like it, it's being manipulated. So we'll talk about the subtle distinction between those. In your formal writing assignments, these are your research and rhetorical analysis writings. You'll be graded on 4 content areas. These are the actual content of the ideas. It's the content itself. The organization, how things are put together, your grammar and mechanics. I'm not getting too complicated with grammar. Are you spelling things correctly? Are you using punctuation correctly? Some basic ground level stuff like, do your verbs agree with your subject? Things like that. A lot of stuff that's like very intuitive that you don't really think about. But then, the big thing is fragments and run-ons. Like I think fragments, run-ons, and then like unclear pronouns are the things that I run into the most. And then some people I think have random capitalization syndrome where you just get to a word and you're like, this is an important word, and you capitalize it. We're not, we'll work on that. It seems like random capitalization syndrome is receding. It seemed like it happened a lot more when I first started, but I had one student, they capitalized like every other word. It was wild. It's like, I don't know where you came from or why you're doing this. I could not get them to stop capitalizing words. It was infuriating. I was like, just don't do this. Like, whenever you start to do this, just don't do that. It gets frustrating, right? And then research and citation. When research and citation is a valid element of the assignment, this will only be for the research stuff and the rhetorical analysis. These aren't really content areas that I'm really going to be grading you for on the free writings, right? These are like things that are eligible for revision. So each of the content areas that, each assignment's worth a different amount of points. So, broken down by percentages, right? You know, I kind of label them like these, right? If it's insufficient is an F, right? You scored less than 59% in an individual content area or for the assignment overall, right? Beginning, right? This is basically a D in individual content areas. And then once I add up all of those points, you know, for the assignment overall, right? So you can suffer in one area and excel in a different area, and it doesn't necessarily reflect like getting a bad grade overall. Does that make sense? Right? Like if your grammar might be like like you might be getting a beginning score on your grammar, but it could be that the content of your ideas is so blisteringly insightful that you're being exemplary in this content area. And those two might balance themselves out to something like where, you know, you're more in this range for the entire assignment. Does that make sense? Like sort of how all those different areas are balancing. If it doesn't make sense now, it seems, I think, maybe more complicated than it is in practice. But whenever you get these assignments back, you'll see that there'll be a score in each of these content areas, and I'll give you like 3 comments that are basically like, these are 3 things that you need to work on when you aim to revise this assignment, right? And not every assignment needs to be revised. And honestly, I would say, you know, if you score less than a 69, like a 69 or below for the entire assignment that's eligible for revision, you should revise it. Is to use this class as a prerequisite, you need to get at least a 70, which is, you know, averaging at least this on all of your assignments. So, you know, if you get at least a C and you're comfortable with getting a C, I'm not going to force you to revise that. If you want that, that's fine. If you're sort of averaging out a C on your writing assignments, you want to do better, then the opportunity for revision enables you to get more points back in revision. The only caveat to revision is that any formal writing assignment eligible for revision can be, it's due back, and I'll broach this whenever we hit the individual assignments, within a week of it being scored, right? Not a week of when it's due, because it takes me about a week, especially as 28 students in this class. That's, you know, 400 words times 28 students. That's how many words I have to read for that particular week. When it gets to the research paper, you know, we're talking like 40,000 words, like a novel's worth of words that I'm reading. I can usually turn those around in about a week. So whenever that timestamp is on like, I finished this on this day, then you have a week's time to revise it after that. Does that make sense? It's a lot of information, a lot of info dump in the first session. Incompletes, I'm not going to really go over incompletes. This doesn't happen too often. If it's late in the semester, it's past the drop deadline, and something terrible happens, you break your ankle, you get hit by an 18-wheeler, your bearded dragon eats your arm. We can talk about doing an incomplete if that's relevant. Your bile python escapes and eats your dental assistant. 1, we have a replacement dental assistant for you. 2, we have a way to shelter you from that grade. As long as you were doing well, we can talk about doing an incomplete. I usually don't have incompletes. I've only done a handful of them ever. Most of my incompletes came during the COVID semester for obvious reasons, but before that, I had only ever dealt with 1, so it's not something that we do too much. And the last thing, academic dishonesty and plagiarism. We take it pretty seriously. Plagiarism doesn't necessarily imply intent. You could as easily accidentally plagiarize as intentionally plagiarize. And that's going to be the upshot of learning academic style, like MLA. It's learning how to document your sources, learning how to document when you're borrowing language and what that's supposed to look like. Because if you don't cite something properly, you go on to Texas State University or anything, they don't make any distinctions about intentional versus unintentional plagiarism. If something's improperly cited and it is caught, it's going to be considered plagiarism, and you're just going to have to deal with that. And plagiarism doesn't just mean like, you know, copy and pasting stuff from a website. It could mean like if you pay for if you go to a paper mill and you pay for somebody to write a paper for you and you turn that content in and that content is found out, that's plagiarism. That's tantamount to fraud, you can get like exposed from university or college from doing stuff like that. So you don't want to mess around with any of that. It's not ideal. I've never had a problem with plagiarism. I'm not going to kick you out of college if I'm like, this is not cited properly. This is what we're learning how to do. So I'm going to point it out. I'll be like, hey, you need to cite this because it will be considered plagiarism if you don't cite stuff like this and you make a habit out of it. So that's the benefit of learning an academic style. All right, that was a lot of information there. But any questions or comments about anything there?
I have questions about accommodations.
Okay. Do you want to talk about it now, or do you want to wait until maybe the end?
After the class,
Okay, for sure.
but on Zoom,
Yeah, for sure. I'll wait around at the end and we can talk about that.
All right, thank you.
All right. Anything else for us right now? I'm gonna try to do something in the last minute.
I was wondering if you could teach me how to access into MS Word in Apple.
Oh yeah. So let me go to. I'll show you all where to find. Let me get out of student preview mode real quick. So, and there is a app or Mac compatible version of Word. So if you go to ACC, you type in, Microsoft Word, not like that. Don't put a Q in it. Oh man, yeah, I'm looking for MS Word. Of course I am. There we go. So Microsoft Office 360 account creation and download steps. So to claim your free copy of Microsoft Office 360, follow the following steps, right? And this is going to walk you through exactly how to download it and how to access it. You'll access it with your ACC email. And what you'll do is you'll just log in, you'll create an account, it'll download Microsoft Office Suite for you. And I haven't ever used it on a Mac, but I know that it is compatible with Mac. I believe it is compatible with Mac. Let's make a more modest claim out of that. If you have any problems with that, let me know. Otherwise, you might have to use something like Apache OpenOffice, or like I said, converting something to a PDF is usually sufficient from Apple Pages. Or just literally, if you type it into Apple first, and then you can copy and paste it into that text submission editor, that's usually a good workaround too. The only problem with that is that, like, for the more formal assignments, like, it'll kill your formatting. But does that address what you're asking about?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. And actually, while I have the chat box up, I'll just go ahead and I'll drop this link into it. So if anybody wants to visit that, you can get there from there. And yeah, there's information about downloading the instructions there. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question.
What's up?
On the discussion threads,
Mhm.
the responses from the other students, are those going to be uploaded and we'll be able to see them
You'll be able to see everything in the thread, yes.
on the day of the class, or like, I guess, throughout whatever time frame before class?
It'll be, yeah, you'll wanna publish. I'm not gonna punish. There should be enough people responding to where you shouldn't have any problem responding. But yeah, like once you, this is another reason why, like, don't wait until 11:50 to post your comment. So do it a little bit early so that people have the opportunity to comment back on stuff. But yeah, it'll be available all the way until noon, the day that it's due, and then the thread will go away. I might amend that a little bit so that the thread doesn't totally disappear. But
it'll show in the same spot as the prompts and everything.
Yeah, when you go there, and I'll show you what it looks like here. You go back to the discussion thread, and I'll just type up like create a thread real quick. Oh, come back. right? So this is what it'll look like when there's a thread active, right? And so you'll go here and you'll say, oh, okay, there's a thread published. Let's see what this guy says. And it'll be like that, right? And then to reply to it, you'll just hit here and it'll be like, what a great point. Wow. Oh boy, I always do that. Go away. And so then it'll show like all of the successive threads below it, right? It's like a really crude version of Reddit or something like that. Even cruder than Reddit itself, which is amazing. I don't know where they get this stuff. I don't know. Blackboard is, I'm not ideal. Oh, interesting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so is this going to be kind of the similar, I guess, process for other assignments as well? When we upload our document or whatever, and then we'll be, I mean, I don't know what I'm trying to ask, but.
I think I see what you're saying. Like for the discussion threads, everyone will be able to see all the things that everyone posts. For your for like the research paper and stuff like that, only I see that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it uploads the same way as like you showed us with the discussion threads.
Yeah, it's really similar. Like if I were to go to, let's say I go to the course content and like there's research, you can already look through all the research assignments. They're already like all the rubrics are posted. Like say you wanted to post the research free writing, you'll go down here and you want to upload your file and you'll submit it. It'll convert it and it'll look, this is what it'll look like whenever you submit like a document file to like one of the assignment well, I don't want to say assignments, but like it's an assignments are a category of thing on Blackboard, and then the discussion threads are a different kind of category of thing. So like whenever you upload the discussion boards, the formatting, the interface formatting looks a little bit different, but this is like everything that's like an assignment, like a formal writing assignment, is going to look like this one. Everything that's a discussion thread, informal writing assignment, is going to look like this discussion threads, which is more like this. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Gotcha. Abby, you had asked, are we allowed to use Google Docs? Yes, you are. You can actually link a Google Doc by, let's say you go to course content. I'll just use the orientation assignment as an example. But down here in the submission, browse local files, browse cloud service. That is where you'll be able to link your Google Docs from browsing your cloud service. So if you want, that's another workaround for anybody who's using Apple, as long as you're using G Suite, which everyone who has an ACC email can use G Suite. If you use Google Docs, you can just link me your Google Doc. Like you can just hit drive there and then you'll sign in with Google. And, as long as it's in your cloud, you'll be able to, put anything in there. Yes, continue. All right. And then it'll show you, okay, I've got all these things in my Google Drive. I can click on that and then I'll import it and it just uploads like that, right? Good questions. Anything else for anyone? Well, I wanted to hit the ground running, but it's just not going to happen. So what we'll do next time is I'll circle back around to some of these concepts at the beginning that I wanted to talk about today. I'll go over my basic grammar notes, my writing process notes, and my active reading notes. And then if I have time, yeah, I'll also introduce the research free writing next time. But the main ideas that we're going to talk about is we're going to jump right in on expressive writing. And so for next time, you'll watch the TED Talk by Adichie, and you'll read the blog post by Cheryl Strayed in course content. And so you'll go to expressive and literary writing, and you'll be watching Adichie's TED Talk, and you'll be reading Cheryl Strayed. We're really only going to talk about her response to Alyssa Bassett. it would help. Bassett's original post is not particularly long, and it would help to give her response context. But we aren't really going to talk about her writing as much as we're going to talk about Stray's response, because Stray's response is going to model some ideas about expressions of identity, expressions of values, and things like that. She's going to talk about what does it mean to be a writer? What is the definition of a writer? And Aditye's TED Talk is about how different stories shape our perception of the world and ourselves, and how we are blind to certain things because of them, but how they can also be used to enlighten us about certain ideas, and how the power that is sort of inherent in the stories that we tell about ourselves, about each other, the stories that we learn about the world from the media or people in our lives and things like that. So we'll talk about we'll start off with talking about description and expressive writing next time. So that'll probably take up most of the second half of the class. We'll talk about expressive writing and description. And then the first half of the class, we'll do a run through some grammar. I'll show you some terrible sentences and we'll talk about why they're bad. And I'll introduce the free writing assignment for the research project, which is going to be due in a couple of weeks. So start thinking, start turning over in your mind, like, what topic do I want to spend some time with this summer that I might get totally frustrated and bored to tears over, but still love and invest enough of my emotional time into that I can always come back to it and won't be totally put off by it because you'll be spending the better part of about 10 weeks researching, reading about it, reading background about it, reading arguments about it, trying to formulate some sort of coherent, structured response to some kind of proposal, some kind of informing and persuasive purpose of your research paper. So on that note, though, we're drawing to a close. There's nothing I can tell you in the next 2 minutes. It's gonna be particularly useful. So I'll go ahead and let you go there. I'll stop my screen share on that, and I'll